Ann here from Backroad Buddies, and the video we want to share with you today is about our Starlink experience. So early on during our Season 6 travels in 2024, we decided to add Starlink. So we're sharing our experience with it in hopes that it'll help you. Let's start with why we got Starlink. Now, up until we got Starlink, for internet connections while we were traveling, we had a couple options. One was we would hotspot to our phones, which is AT&T, and then we also carried a Verizon Jetpack hotspot. And combined with both of those, we also have a WeBoost cell amplifier, so to try to increase the signal. Now, this Verizon Jetpack is kind of old. It's only 4G, not 5G. And as we got into our travels in 2024, there was a lot of times we weren't getting a very good cell signal, even with the WeBoost on. And then our Verizon Jetpack liked to drop our connection quite annoyingly. I don't know if it was more than before, but we just got tired of it. So I thought, hey, there is another option out there. So we ordered a Starlink and actually picked it up at a Best Buy near us where we happened to be, and went with that along with our cell options for the rest of the season. So next we'll talk about how we set up Starlink in our EKKO. Now there's several different options with Starlink, but we got the standard kit. So that included the dish with the little kickstand here, and the router, and the power supply, and a cable, a decent length cable. So to help us kind of organize everything in our rig, we actually bought a wall mount kit so we could mount at least the router and the power supply onto the wall. So this just snaps into the wall mount and the mount screws into the wall. The same thing with the power supply. So we chose to mount these on the wall between the two upper cabinets in the bedroom in the EKKO. And so it was kind of space we had available, and it was out of the way. There was an outlet right there as well, and so that was the most convenient spot for it. Plus we ran a cable up to the port. On EKKO comes with a little roof port, and that comes in through the upper cabinet in the bedroom on the driver's side. So we ran that cord through there, and we could run that over to the router. So at the roof port, we installed what's called a waterproof Ethernet connector. And so that we had to install that in the roof port, and then on the end of a cable is the other attachment that attaches into there. So that makes a nice waterproof connection. Now we'd got a 50-foot cable. There's nothing special about the Starlink cable. It's just a regular, I think, Cat 7 cable. So we have a 50-foot, so the one end went into the port, and the other end we connected, this is called a waterproof coupler, Ethernet coupler. So this kind of protects the other end, because we coiled this cable up and we tied it to the ladder on the back, and we just left it there all the time. So we weren't plugging and unplugging from the rooftop port. So then we could then take this part. Let's see if I can do this. So inside here is the regular connector. And so you would take this and plug it into the back of the dish. So once we had it connected to the dish, then we could lay the dish either up on the roof or we would lay it on the ground depending where the best view of the sky is, because you have to have an open view of the sky for Starlink to work. If you're in the middle of dense woods, it's not going to do you any good. So we would do either option. And then when we were done using it, we would reverse it, disconnect it from the dish, and then seal this back up in the connector. It would stay clean and dry in there. Let's see if I can do that. Now the dish itself we stored inside the rig. In the bedroom back underneath the passenger side bed, we had already removed the door to that big cabinet, wardrobe cabinet underneath, and that's where we had our laundry basket. Well, the dish actually slid in right next to the laundry basket, so it fit in there pretty well. But we put a little bracket at the top to keep, so we had a little bracket attached to the wall so it wouldn't flop over this way, and then along the side we put a little angle, metal angle, to keep it from sliding out. And initially we had a little Velcro strap so we could try to hold it in place, but the adhesive on that Velcro didn't like to stick to the dish and it kept coming off, and we tried a couple times, but we ended up giving up on that. But we didn't really need the Velcro strap. Just having the two brackets kind of held it in place along being up against the laundry basket, so it wasn't an issue. So that's where we stored the dish. Now there is no switch on the router or the power supply with the Starlink, so you basically turn it on and off by plugging it in and unplugging it. Well, from where it was on the shelf, we had a couple other things on that shelf, that wall where we had things mounted, and so plugging and unplugging that plug was a little difficult, so we changed that outlet there to a switchable outlet so we could easily turn it on and off. So what did we like about Starlink? The first thing is the speed. The Starlink speeds are so much faster than going through a hotspot on cell signal. We were usually seeing download speeds in the hundreds of megabits per second, upload speeds, in about the 20 to 30 or more megabits per second going up. As a comparison with our hotspots, we normally were thankful when we could get, upload speeds of 10 megabits per second or more. So being in the hundreds was, just so much faster. Number two is we liked the range of the router. So the router was all the way in the bedroom, but I don't know how far the range is, but we could be way on the other side of the campsite, 30, 40 feet away, and we'd still have a really strong signal and would be fine. In comparison, if we were going off of the jetpack hotspot or just even off the WeBoost, we normally had to sit almost right by the entry door of the rig in order to get a good signal. So we couldn't go wandering off over to the picnic table or the fire pit or somewhere. Number three is with Starlink, we usually could figure out where to go to get a good signal. So even if we were at a campsite that had a lot of tree cover and we couldn't get Starlink there, usually it wasn't that far of a drive away to go to a large parking lot or an overlook where there was a nice view of the sky. So usually we could figure out something close by. Now in comparison, when you have a bad cell signal, you really don't have a good idea of where you could go to get a better signal. It's just kind of trial and error. So we really like that, and we actually use that quite a bit. At Capitol Reef National Park, and our one campsite had too much tree cover. Well, there was this large parking lot not even a tenth of a mile away that we drove over to, and then we'd had all the Starlink we wanted. And the same thing was true at Kings Canyon. We were camped in the National Forest, but we were going for a drive along Kings Canyon, and there was this nice overlook, so we stopped for lunch, pulled out the Starlink. So it it's a lot more convenient to find a good signal. So what didn't we like about Starlink? So the number one dislike was the price. It was, $650 that we paid for that standard kit. And then we had more money in the mounting brackets and the connectors for the waterproof connections. So it was more than that. And then the monthly service on top of that started out $150 per month. And that's unlimited data. And then I think in October, the price went up to $165 per month for unlimited data. And they're now offering a bunch of different plans, so you could get something cheaper if you wanted to limit the amount of data you have. Now, in comparison, if we're using our cell phones, we get, I think it's 60 gigabits per month hotspot on our phones, and that's just our normal cell phone plan. And then our Verizon Jetpack was a grandfathered plan, so for I think $65 a month, we had unlimited data, but you can't get that plan anymore. And there was an initial cost to the Jetpack. I don't remember what we paid for it, but I think right now they go for like $100. The second thing we didn't like was it takes longer to set it up. So in addition to getting the dish out, connecting it up, then Starlink takes kind of a while to boot up. It's got to find a satellite. So it could take, 5-10 minutes to set up. Whereas, the cell phone, it's almost instantaneous. So that meant that if we had a good cell service, we wouldn't bother getting Starlink out. We would just use the cell service. The third thing we didn't like was how much power it drew. Now this is with the standard kit. They have a mini out now that takes less power. So with the standard setup, it could take anywhere from 45 watts, which is, I guess, when it's idle, all the way up to 150 watts of power. And this was a noticeable drain on our batteries. So we would usually try to turn it off when we weren't using it, like overnight, or we were leaving the rig for the day to go for a hike or whatever. We'd make sure we turn it off, and that was another reason why we liked having the switch, so it was easy to turn it on and off. Now that meant when we go to turn it back on when we want it, you got to go through the whole setup again and let it find a satellite, so it wasn't instantaneous like the cell service is. So why did we remove Starlink? As you probably noticed as I was going through talking about this, you notice it was no longer installed in the EKKO. That's because we have canceled our plan and we're planning on selling it. So why are we that unhappy with Starlink? Well, no, we're not that unhappy with Starlink. However, our plans for 2025 is that we are going to Europe and we are not going to be traveling in our EKKO. We're actually putting it in storage for about a year to a year and a half, which means we don't need Starlink during that time. Now, we could have paused the plan and not have those ongoing monthly charges during that time period, but we thought Starlink is changing so quickly and a lot of other options are changing out there that we decided to start with a clean slate in 2026 when we start traveling in our EKKO again. And so that also meant we canceled our Verizon Jetpack, so we will no longer have access to that data plan that we had before. So we're going to start with a clean slate and wait till 2026 and see what the options are out there then. And so you'll have to check back with us in 2026 to see what we end up with. Now, we hope you found this information useful. We like Starlink, however, we don't see it as a single solution for internet connection, mainly because we like to camp in the woods where Starlink can't be used, at least from the campsite. So we'd have to move to get a connection. So we see Starlink as an important piece, but just a piece of a solution. So we would probably still go with some type of cell service, because that can work in the woods depending where you are. And it's just nice to have a set of tools in your toolbox to be able to connect with. So now that depends on how you like to travel, where you like to travel to, where you camp, and what your internet needs are. We generally are just doing uploads and downloads and searching for information online, so we aren't doing online meetings or video conferencing, so having that uninterrupted stream is not a priority for us. Now, your needs may be different, so we hope that you find the solutions that you're looking for. So good luck. Thanks for watching. If you want more details, especially links to some of the products we used, then look in the description below for a link to our related blog posts, so check that out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Ta-ta for now.